He didn't know who was watching. A simple moment, an innocent exchange. But the note he received would shatter everything. A man with wealth and power, disguised and unnoticed, walks into a diner. To the world, he's just another customer. But the black waiter sees something others don't. The note he hands over isn't just a message, it's a warning. What happens next will reveal a hidden truth that no one is ready to face. Will the truth finally be heard, or will it be buried? Once again, David had worked at the diner for over 5 years, a job that had become as routine as the sunrise. Every morning, he put on his uniform, greeted regulars by name, and moved through the motions of a life that felt both comfortable and confining. The tips were decent, the work steady, and his co-workers were family. He didn't expect anything more. Until that day. It started like any other. The bell above the door chimed as customers filtered in, none of them particularly memorable. But then he saw him, dressed casually, a man who didn't stand out at first glance. A man who seemed ordinary in every way, except for the quiet way he observed everything around him. David didn't think twice. It was just another customer, after all. But what David didn't know was that this seemingly insignificant encounter would reveal a truth about his world he wasn't prepared to face. David's shift dragged on as usual, the hum of the diner's kitchen blending with the quiet murmur of conversations. But the man at table 7 didn't blend in. He sat there, quietly scanning the menu, but David could feel his eyes on him, watching. His gaze was sharp, focused, like he was analyzing more than just the food on the menu. David tried to brush it off, but the unsettling feeling kept building. He felt his pulse quicken as he approached. The man's eyes followed him the whole way. "Can I take your order?" David asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. The man didn't answer right away. He just stared for a long, uncomfortable moment. It felt like the air had thickened. "I'll have the burger," he said finally, his voice low, deliberate. David nodded, mentally noting how strange this all felt. But the moment wasn't unusual enough to warrant more thought. He turned to walk away, but just before he left, the man's voice stopped him. "You know," he said, "there's something different about you." David turned back, feeling his throat tighten. "What do you mean?" he asked, not sure if he wanted to hear the answer. The man paused, leaning in as if sharing a secret. "You don't look like the others here. Not really. Something about your eyes, maybe your energy." David froze, trying to make sense of the comment. It wasn't exactly racist, but the tone carried an edge that left him uneasy. Was it a compliment? A judgment? Before he could respond, the man's lips curled into a thin smile. He waved David off with a flick of his wrist. "Forget I said anything. Just bring the burger." David moved away, feeling a strange weight pressing down on him. The rest of his shift was a blur, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The man's words haunted him. He kept thinking about them, replaying them in his head, trying to make sense of what felt like a silent accusation. But it wasn't until the man left that things truly took a dark turn. As the diner quieted down and David cleared the last few tables, he noticed the man's table had been left untouched. No plate, no empty cup. Only a folded note lying where the bill should have been. David hesitated before he picked it up. It was folded in a crisp, neat square, but the weight of it felt heavy, almost ominous. He opened it slowly, reading the words scrawled in messy handwriting. "You'll never be more than they let you. Remember your place." A cold shiver ran down his spine. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. The note seemed to burn into his palm, the words slicing through the silence of the diner. What did this mean? Who wrote it? And why had this stranger, this man with so much power, felt the need to remind him of his place? His heart pounded. He wanted to crumple the note, throw it away, pretend it hadn't happened. But he couldn't. The words felt like a slap in the face, and now David could feel his blood boiling with a mix of confusion and fury. He scanned the diner, hoping the man was still there, but the table was empty. The man had disappeared, just like the stain on David's soul that would never fade. David folded the note back up, his hands trembling. Something inside him snapped. He knew this wasn't just about a rude customer or a cruel joke. This was bigger. This was personal, and now he couldn't unsee what was behind it. The night dragged on, but David couldn't stop thinking about the words. He glanced at the empty booth where the man had sat. How could someone just leave a message like that, without even looking back? He knew he couldn't forget. Not now. Not after everything the note revealed. It wasn't just a reminder of his place. It was a warning, and David knew that the truth was coming. But would it be enough to stop what had already started? David stood frozen in the kitchen, staring at the note in his hand. His heart was pounding, his mind racing. What was he supposed to do with this? Should he call someone? Report it? His fingers trembled as he folded the paper back up, but before he could process what to do next, the diner door swung open. The man from earlier walked in again, this time with a few other people in tow. They moved like they owned the place, their eyes scanning the room as if everything and everyone were beneath them. The air in the diner shifted instantly, the low murmur of conversation dropping to a dull silence. David's stomach twisted. The weight of the note felt heavier now. The man glanced at David, a smile creeping up the corner of his mouth. Without a word, he motioned to one of the other men who walked toward the counter. David didn't know what he expected, but when the man slammed a fistful of cash down in front of him, the words hit him like a slap. "Your kind doesn't belong here," the man said, his voice low but cutting. "People like you should know their place. This isn't your world." David's blood ran cold. His hands shook, but he stayed silent, too stunned to respond. He'd heard things like this before, in whispers, in looks, but never so openly. Never so directly. The man leaned in closer, his breath hot against David's ear. "Know your place," he repeated. "You'll never be more than what we let you be." David's world seemed to stop. He was shaking. But it wasn't from fear. It was from rage. The kind of anger that burns deep inside, a fire that demands to be seen. His eyes locked onto the man's, but this time David didn't look away. In that moment, something inside him broke free. He felt the weight of every injustice he had ever faced, the looks, the words, the barriers. This wasn't just about a rude customer anymore. This was about a world that refused to see him as equal, as human. "You're wrong," David said, his voice quiet at first. But as he spoke, the words grew louder, more certain. "I am more than what you think I am. I am more than your words. And you will see it. All of you." The room seemed to hold its breath. But before anyone could respond, the man turned away, smirking like it didn't matter. But David knew in that instant it had changed everything. The battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. David left the diner that night with a heaviness in his chest that wouldn't fade. The world felt different, sharper, more hostile, but also more real. He had faced a truth he couldn't ignore anymore. The man's words, the note, the way the room had gone silent in that moment of confrontation. It wasn't just about him. It was about the hundreds of thousands of people who had been told they didn't belong, that their existence didn't matter. It was about every look, every comment, every moment where someone was made to feel less than human. When David got home, he couldn't sleep. The anger bubbled inside him, but so did something else, something deeper, more painful. The knowledge that, in some ways, this wasn't just a one-off incident. It was part of a system that had been in place for generations. It was part of a world where those in power used their influence to keep others down. But now, he understood something vital. It didn't have to be this way. He could no longer stay silent. He couldn't let this moment be just a story to tell, a fleeting injustice. It was more than that. It was a call to action. For every person who had ever faced discrimination, for every person who had ever felt small, unseen, or unheard, David knew he had to fight. He had to speak up. As he stood there in the quiet of his room, staring at the note one last time, he asked himself, what will it take for this cycle to end? Because the reality is, the fight isn't over. It never has been. We are all part of a bigger story. The story of injustice that's been written for too long. But it's also our choice to rewrite it. The question is, will we continue to let the powerful define our worth? Or will we stand up, speak out, and demand the world finally sees us for who we truly are?